it would be small change compared to losing the right to foreclose. So frankly, my assessment is I don't hold out much hope that the powers that be are going to let all these foreclosures go down the drain over a technicality. The White House is already sending a message that it won't back any federal moratorium on foreclosures. And the Washington Post wrote this week that federal regulators sought to prevent the growing furor over improper foreclosures from escalating by pressing mortgage lenders to quickly replace the fraudulent court documents and insisted that foreclosures continue apace. So that's business as usual. Well, sadly, it's not just foreclosure technicalities that are wrong. Some banks violating the laws in other ways. Some are hiring people to kick in doors, to evict the owners, change locks, and without even properly filing the foreclosure proceedings before. They're using bogus claims like the power's been turned off, which they did, by the way, and we have to safeguard the house from freezing. Of course, that doesn't explain that they're doing this in summertime, and no one believes, let alone a judge, that that excuse is going to hold water. So ultimately, let me go back to the big picture then about where we're heading with this economic problem. We have a fiat money system, and essentially the entire establishment is only going to throw more money at the issue. The IMF, for example, is proposing this week that their solution to the problem of $4 trillion in government debt coming due that has to be rolled over in the next 24 months. The solution to that is you print more money to recapitalize them. Of course, they don't tell the American public that printing money is not true recapitalization. But they have an obligation, says the IMF, to inject fresh equity in the banks. Of course, this may postpone the day of reckoning and solves nothing. Now we hear a lot of talk about replacing the dollar with a basket of currencies. Equally bad idea. This can't happen unless there is an equal rate of inflation agreement between the various currencies in the basket. That seems almost impossible or unlikely now, since every nation is in the midst of a currency war of devaluation. Let me explain. Each country in recession is trying to debase their currency faster than other countries so that there, for example, the dollar will appear cheaper to other countries so that it will increase our exports. In other words, if the dollar's cheaper, people have higher value in the euro to purchase American goods, and it causes money to flow in and exports to flow out. But there's a folly in this because, in fact, it doesn't work when everybody's competing against another, and you can't beat China. China is devaluing its currency faster than anyone else, making sure that its products are cheaper than Japan.
And they've got, and interrupt Joel during here in the live money bump, they have 1,700,000,000 people, 1 billion working folks working at slave wages. It's not just that currency's lower, it's that the wages are lower. It's we're competing against prison labor, 4 million in this country, the 30 million illegal aliens. And you talk about a folly, obviously you know and have written about and talked about it. There's not a folly. There's a folly in what they publicly say all this is for, but we know what the end game is. Destruction of the industrial economy, consolidation in a tiny elite's hands, so everybody is so dependent on these globalists and so bankrupt that they're under their control.
Well, you know, you can only keep this going so long, though. In other words, to really do that would take a collapse, and they run the risk if there is an economic collapse that they themselves could be booted out of office, and you could get a real wholesale political revolution going on in the United States. I don't think they're going to give us that opportunity. I frankly think they're going to continue to milk the system downward slowly, and in fact, I think they can keep it up, believe it or not, for another 10 years. They've got that much power to continually inflate. If they do it slowly enough so that it doesn't get the panic inflation levels, then, in fact, I think they can keep milking this along. And, of course, they've got the press behind them. They've got the financial press. They have the Wall Street pundits that come out every night on television to assure people the recovery's just around the corner. And what can people do about it? They're actually powerless. We can't stop the system. If we even demanded that they replace Timothy Geithner, who would we get? We just get another shill from Goldman Sachs or J.P. Morgan to be secretary.
Hey, I know you talked some about this, but I remember 10 years ago, Patriot groups and others talking about they don't have the deed on the mortgages. They're selling it over and over again to the Chinese. And I'd roll my eyes at most of it. In the last 5, 6 years, I've confirmed it's true. Now, Bank of America, the biggest mortgage holder, and others, it's turning out are suspending all foreclosures. They have ripped off the Europeans, private pension funds here. They've ripped off the Chinese, selling some mortgages 10 times over in the derivatives. They're stealing houses they don't even have the deed to, and houses that are paid for. That's coming out in court. And just a week ago, they were saying, oh, there's a few paper problems. Now mainstream news, BBC, AP, is saying total mortgage fraud. Won't that destroy confidence? And I don't think it's totally designed. Part of it is, but they've overcompensated for their hubris, and they've been so greedy and so good at stealing that they've just committed crimes so big, I don't see them getting away with it. Can you comment on the whole mortgage situation?
Yeah, I think they will get away with it. And the reasons they will, the bigger the crisis, all they have to do is claim that this is going to bring down the entire system. There'll be no more mortgages sold, and the whole housing economy will come to a collapse.
So they hold us hostage again,
Exactly.
and they're announcing to fund this, they now want a 5% tax, at least on pensions, and the government will take control of the pensions, and then what begins as a 5% becomes a 50%.
That's right. You see, the only solution we would have, because the people can do nothing of themselves, it's all in the hands of the courts, and the courts are controlled.
But there have been a lot of rulings against them, and that's why they tried to get Obama last week. He actually did something good. I guess a blind hog can find acres, and broken clocks are right twice a day. He vetoed, it'll come back after, during the lame duck, he's set to sign it, the word is, a bill.
He just briefed to sign it.
Exactly. He said, exactly. To be technical, he said, I'll sign it later, or I won't sign it right now.
It's a pocket veto right now.
Yeah, a pocket veto is the proper term. Thank you, Joe. That he's refusing to freeze all the mortgages right now, but he's saying, oh, some of this is good. And then you've got Reid and others calling for it to try to save their hind end in the election. But to try to have the Congress pass a law saying we're allowed to basically break the law with the way we run these mortgages, that is an amazing attempt to rubber stamp financial tyranny, isn't it?
It is, but here's the way I think that they're going to get away with it. They really will cut a deal with the bank to say, all right, we have decided we're going to fine the bank, $2 billion. The banks will say, oh, this is terrible, you're going to break the bank. They're laughing all the way to the Briar Patch. $2 billion is nothing compared to what they stand to lose if they get these foreclosures pulled out from under them. But listen, this is a conspiracy. I don't have to tell you that.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you the floor because we're almost out of time in 12 minutes. Talk about this. Talk about positive things we can do, waking other people up, auditing the Fed, and other solutions. Joel Skousen, you've got the floor.
Well, the thing that we have to realize, as I said, is this is a conspiracy between powerful forces within government. They control all of the big banks. They control the SEC. They control the bank regulators. Now, these people, just as in Israel, when they pretend to be right-wing, they have to, play up to their constituencies. The people in these agencies have to prosecute a few small chickens. They have to convince people that what we're doing is following the law. But in fact, when it comes to push comes to shove, I can tell you, guarantee absolutely, that the big banks will never be taken down. They'll maybe have to pay a little fine. It's just like Blackwater. Blackwater's never been taken down for all the crimes that they committed in Iraq. They're continually giving new contracts. They morph into different organizations. The banks, what do you think happened to the Lehman Brothers people? They got absorbed by the others. These are insiders. They don't take down an insider without giving them a back door to these things. And that's why it never is, resolutions are never as the public thinks. Look at what happened. Let me talk about what people can do. I am convinced that the only solution for the American people is what no one wants to face. This is the issue of conspiracy. We have collusion within fiduciary areas of responsibility in government, which is totally illegal. It should be prosecuted as conspiracy. But how can the people do that? They can't do it because the only arm of enforcement in the government is controlled. All law enforcement has a black side of it. It's controlled by the dark side of government, and I'm convinced that they control the majority of judges in key positions as well. Once you lose the judges and the enforcement apparatus in government, there's nothing you can do. Now, you can elect Congress that will clean house. That's a really a long shot, because so much of what politics is all about is promising benefits. We in the constitutional conservative movement cannot promise benefits. They can, and so we continue to lose the unthinking majority. So ultimately, these people are going to get bailed out. I'm convinced of it. Foreclosures are going to continue apace. They have to allow a certain amount of time for people to rant and rave and feel like they're getting their pound of flesh. But ultimately, nothing will happen just like in the bailout. AIG is still alive. Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, they're alive, and they prospered in this. Now, ultimately, though, here's our one opportunity. We need to prepare people for what I've been telling them for many, many years, and that is that the United States government has one out for all of this fiat money and this debt pyramid that they're building, which they're not slowing down whatsoever. No matter what they talk about, balancing the budget can never be balanced, never be slowed down. To tax and to pay for it is too painful. They're going to continue to deficit spend and play all of the games they are, and they can run it for another 10 years until they run us into World War III. That World War III is not going to be Iran. It's going to be Russia and China against the United States, and we're talking nuclear weapons. We're talking about a nuclear strike on our military and financial centers, and they will want that to happen because it gives them an excuse to come out of their bunkers and say, all of the records are gone, all of the computers are gone, we simply have to start all over again. Mark my word, Alex, that is exactly what's going to happen someday, and people don't want to admit that horrible conclusion that anyone would be so evil that they would do that to our own nation. But you can mark my words that someday it will happen. And that's why. Here's what people must do. First of all, they've got to start to get out of the paper markets. I'm recommending now that people sell their 401ks. They get out of their pension programs as much as they can. It's better to take the penalties and cash out now and start to pay down your mortgage. Anything that you have debt-free, you're going to be able to keep as long as it's not in a nuclear target area. And it's very important that people start to accumulate real assets. And I don't recommend extreme amounts of gold and silver because I know that's too expensive for most listeners. But paying down the debt, buying and stockpiling materials that you need in everyday life reduces your future need for money. So if you don't have debts, if you own your home, you can barter, you can trade. It's not hard to find money to pay your taxes, especially if you've reduced your need for money. So I believe that people should keep at least $5,000 in cash around. I think they need about $5,000 in gold and silver, mostly in silver, especially silver dollars. Silver dollars are fat, heavy-looking coins. You are much more able to barter that coin away and convince someone it's worth $20 than you are to convince someone the little tiny gold coin is worth $2,000 and then try to get change for something that you want to buy that's $600 and you want $1,400 in change. It's just not going to happen. So I think it's very important to be very realistic, work within your means, and to prepare as long as Alex has done a great job in fighting for liberty, and I'm trying to fight for liberty. Stan Monteith, who's going to be on after me, has done a great job fighting for liberty. But we must not delude ourselves into thinking in the hubris that we're going to win this thing. We have to prepare at the same time that we fight to be taken down. We have to prepare for war. We have to prepare to live another day. Because frankly, I believe that we're never going to take back country as a whole because of the unthinking majorities that are controlled by a corrupt media. I think if we have a possibility, it will be because of smaller bastions of liberty that will be created in the chaos of a coming war. That when people that, the remnants, I call it, that are being grouped, created by the works of Alex and many other people, will, by the inspiration of the Lord, feel inspired to group to areas where they can renew freedom. And I think it's within those smaller groups that we'll be able to survive someday. But we must survive the war to do that. And I know that's off most people's radar screen. But I can tell you, if you subscribe to the World Affairs Brief, if you read any of my books, you can be convinced that our government is covering for Russian and Chinese war preparation, pacifying, trying to do everything they can.
Well, they gave them the Panama Canal. They gave them all the nuke secrets. They gave North Korea. They give everybody the systems.
And look at how they're playing paper tiger with North Korea, guaranteeing no regime change, guaranteeing that we'll have no military intervention. And North Korea is a pariah in the world compared to Iran, and yet we give Iran no slack. We know they're going to war in Iran, and yet they continue to. I think they're preserving North Korea for a trigger event in World War III. And as I say, I don't think it's going to come off for another 8 to 10 years, but I think we need to take that time to prepare so that we're ready for whatever comes in the future.
Well, Joel, talk about it in closing, a disgusting example and really a show window of hereditary tyranny, that communism is about a bunch of murdering kingpins. To watch the third generation, this Kim Il-sung's son, the son of Kim Jong-il, the grandson of the first dictator, that big, fat, bloated hog. They admit they spend millions a year on gourmet meals on jets from Europe thrown to them. Kim Jong-il, the current dictator, on record kidnaps, has special teams kidnap South Korean and Japanese film stars. He has a 6-story torture palace, sex palace. I mean, that's the face of collectivism, is the hell it's North Korea, and a bloated, fat, demonic hog, 23 years old, being made the dictator, up there seething in power, surrounded by all these control freaks in their uniforms, all just equally into the power because the minions under them worship them, so they worship the psychopath above them. Is that not a disgusting display of this filth?
It is disgusting, Alex, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. In fact, the Chinese are running North Korea.
Yes, that's on record.
And Kim Jong-un was the heir apparent, now is trained in Switzerland. He's actually got a lot of pro-Western ideas. They're not going to let him rule by himself without the handlers, the controllers from Red China who are swarming that place. They're the ones keeping that thing afloat.
But reportedly they're not having the 33-year-old fat goblin run things, the older son, and they run. They've got this Soon guy because he's supposedly ruthless. Yeah, he likes Von Damme, and he likes Schwarzenegger, and but and the other older brother, try to sneak into Japan to go to Disney World. But I mean, give me a break. I mean, you looked at the photos of him just seething with evil.
Yeah, that's right. But as I say, this is a facade. There's nobody that incompetent, that corrupt, that can run a country and do what they do. This is the pariah puppet state of Russia and China, and Russia's keeping way background.
Yeah, Russia borders North Korea as well.
That's right, absolutely true. So China really has their hands in that, and they're making sure that North Korea is kept. It's just an incredible ploy. Our government not controlled by some people. These people know. If I know it, they know it.
Well, it was the Chinese that backed the North Koreans with the demonic grandpa, and they're still there backing it, but they own the most of our debt. Next, the Federal Reserve. We are captured by a bunch of scum, and it's time it stops.
Well, we've got to remember that whenever you look at how the U.S. plays China, they are bending over backwards to make sure that China gets every advantage. They're not trying to interdict Chinese capture of oil supplies and strategic territory, whether it's in the Bahamas, whether it's in Panama, whether it's in Long Beach, California, God forbid. They're there too. We're facilitating Chinese hegemony all over the world, and I think this current conflict between Geithner and China is just so much showmanship. They have to appear to the American people as if they're bucking China. They're not. Gates goes back, and the Asian conference there in Hanoi, all they could do was beg the Chinese to have more military exchanges with them. Now, what possible purpose do we have as the United States doing military exchanges with China? What possible purpose do we have as inducing President Sarkozy and France to cause a military treaty, security treaty with Russia?
Well, listen, just 2 days ago, as you know, AP reported they had a secret nuke bomber drill with aircraft from China practicing refueling in our supposed #1 ally after Israel, Middle East, Turkey.
Turkey, that's right. Absolutely. Turkey has essentially switched sides. They were being bribed by the United States to have close relationships with Israel. They got stung now, and they turned the corner. We've lost that.
Yeah, well, the issue is the #1 holder of our debt is doing refueling drills, because I guess they never had the RAND Corporation with the mid-air refueling, practicing fueling jets for an attack on West Europe. And the government's got 95% of its homeland security apparatus pointed at gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, returning veterans. This is a degenerate group of scum, And the CFR is on record for 30 years saying they were going to make China the 21st century power, the Chinese century. Nothing against the Chinese people, but holy mackerel, the most demonic, murdering country on earth in history is the Chinese, and Mao Zedong and David Rockefeller praising him. And just shame on the FBI, shame on the government, shame on all of you spying on citizens while they're refueling nuke bombers in Turkey, and you're there sucking your thumb, spying on us right now. You make me sick. It's just unbelievable. Joel Skousen, I really appreciate you spending the last 45 minutes with us, and I look forward to speaking to you in the near future.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's always good to be with you.
Good to have you here with us. I mean, come on. Nuke bombers practicing refueling in Turkey to nuke Europe, and Ron Paul's the threat. Alex Jones is a threat. You got this piece of trash, George Soros, running around with all these media companies attacking this operation every day, implying that we should be arrested. Yeah, nuke bombers aren't a problem. Giving all these enemies all the weapons and our debt, that's not the problem. It's us here in Austin, Texas, because we're not scum. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.